nearly 20 to 1, and you're listening to BBC Radio London Thursday afternoon with Jim, in for Eddie. One of our main topics today has been this report into the personal independence payment no longer fit for purpose. That's how a government review of the main benefit paid to disabled people has described PIP. Disabled people asked about it have regularly complained, describing the whole process as dehumanising, soul-destroying and degrading. The report out today about reforming personal independence payment suggests changes in the way the benefit is assessed after the government dropped plans to tighten the criteria in response to a backbench rebellion, as our political correspondent Ian Watson can tell us.
A year ago, many on the Labour backbenches were mounting a sustained rebellion against planned cuts to PIPs, which help with the increased costs faced by people with disabilities. The government was forced to shelve plans to restrict eligibility, and instead disabled people were brought in to review the system alongside Sir Stephen Timms. That review received 38,000 submissions, and 90% of them were critical of the assessment process, with some describing it as dehumanising. Sir Stephen said fundamental change was required.
I think we do need to go back to square one about the assessment and think hard, as we will be doing over the next few months, about how the decision should be made about who is receiving this benefit and how much they receive.
He said he hadn't yet spoken to the likely Prime Minister Andy Burnham about the review. The cost of PIP is forecast to rise from more than $26 billion last year to just under $41 billion by the end of the decade. There's been a significant increase in claims from younger people since the pandemic and from those with conditions such as ADHD. Specific changes to eligibility won't be recommended until the second Timms report in the autumn, but the Conservatives have accused the government of being in denial about the spiralling costs.
Well, these people have been calling the BBC to share their experience of receiving personal independence payments.
I've had 2 brain hemorrhages, which has left me with significant memory problems, uncontrollable epilepsy, functional neurological disorder, learning difficulties, you name it. But I claim PIP to help me get around, basically. I work, working is really difficult, due to the tiredness, the embarrassment with my memory, epilepsy, it's as unpredictable as life. But I work to give me reward and purpose and to tell me why I'm still alive. So I use my PIP to help me commute, to get me around, get taxis and so on. Epilepsy, you can't drive.
Tell me about the actual assessment process. What was that like?
It's so really difficult and complicated. And when you have disabilities yourself, in my case, I had learning difficulties. The first brain hemorrhage had really buggered up my brain. And it's just so complex. It's like, what do I do? What's it asking me? All these different people, you have to go and get Dr. Little's permission and just so many different things. I ended up employing a PA for a bit to help me manage it all. The stress, I can't say I can remember, but stress triggers epileptic seizures. And I just think that have a bit more bloody understanding for us, for goodness sake. Having a disability is really, really challenging, It really is. There's not enough trust. There's not enough compassion. There's nothing, PIP saves the day for me.
Look at my wife. She's 5'4", 9 stone, beautiful. You wouldn't think there's anything wrong with her. She has been through absolute hell in the last 10 years. She's nearly died on operating theatre. The reason it all started was because she had something taken out of her bottom, which was a drainage channel, by a district nurse. That led to her being bedbound for 2 years. So we started on the PIP process. I consider myself fairly educated. I'm an ex-deputy head teacher, senior leader in the school. It is the most degrading, demeaning. The form I didn't understand. She's gone through it twice. The first occasion, she was denied. And I had I said, no, you're entitled to this. So I became her advocate. She would have given up at that point.
Well, we spoke to Gary as well earlier on the programme. He was telling me that he's given 30 years of his life to healthcare in this country and developed spinal problems as a result. He's also battling cancer. He found the process incredibly challenging to apply for and be accepted for PIP. But he had an incredibly comprehensive paper trail, shall we say, to back up his claim, and actually they fully supported him in that process. So some varying experiences of it. Adam Gabsi is a disability campaigner and friend of the show and joins us now. Adam, hello, good afternoon.
How are you? Good afternoon.
Good. I'm always a pleasure to hear your voice on the air. For those who've not met you, just remind us what disabilities you deal with.
Yes, sir. I am co-chair of Inclusion London. I'd like to say that from the beginning. I have multiple sclerosis and I'm a wheelchair user. So I have lived experience of the PIP process and, other barriers that we face as disabled people.
There have been a lot of changes to the assessment for PIP over the years, haven't there? And, some more functional than others. How do you find the situation currently, and what needs to change, do you think?
That is a very good question, because I've read parts of the initial review and spoken to colleagues at Inclusion London, and it kind of reads as a critique of the Department for Work and Pensions. Yeah. So rather than an assault on disabled people, which it shouldn't be, by the way, I think your callers articulated themselves very well in the recordings that you had. The process is very dehumanizing and somewhat unnecessary. But again, that is a critique of the DWP. I credit Stephen Timms for saying that PIP is an essential part. It's essential for allowing disabled people to participate in life. Yeah. So as your caller had said previously, she uses her PIP for transport.
Yes.
Now this is. Sorry, you go on, Jim. Sorry.
Well, without it, she would be stuck at home and unable to work. And,
indeed.
Where does that leave you in terms of your ability to just live your life, contribute to society and maintain your mental health? I would imagine probably in a very dark place.
That's right. Me personally, I'm a great believer that the purpose of life is a life of purpose. Yeah, so really contributing to London in any facet, whether that be, however that may be, is very important for someone. I read the review as a failure of the systems. Yeah, so other systems, the NHS is failing, adult social care is failing, and 92% of disabled people that are in work are using it to cover the gaps that access to work is not covering, right? So essential pieces of equipment, disabled people are paying for it themselves with their PIP. Yeah, now this is something that should be covered via the access to work scheme, but that scheme is failing.
That's a great point. It's a great point. Let me ask you a difficult question, though, Adam, because I know you can handle this, right? Okay, so the assessment as to your eligibility for PIP, it must be a factual summary of your situation and whether or not it fits the criteria as laid out in the law as to whether or not you should receive taxpayer money. So that is entirely based in black and white factual response. There is some room for ambiguity, I imagine, in the medical diagnosis and the impact it might have on your life. I accept that. But how much room for compassion and empathy is there in that process, or should there be in that process, do you think?
Essentially, I agree. Yeah, that there needs to be change within the assessment process, because disabled people, such as myself, who has an impairment of multiple sclerosis that is not going to change, it is only going to progressively decline. Why am I being reassessed? Why am I being questioned? The whole thing is kind of dehumanizing. And, you say empathy and compassion. Well, that is something the DWB needs to learn. Yeah, because it is very dehumanizing, the process. Even receiving a brown envelope is very stressful for us. Many disabled people. And, the whole thing is leading to an exacerbation of symptoms, which is not great.
Let's look at it from a legal point of view, though, because the law in this country is dispassionate for that very specific reason. The minute you fold emotion into a decision about a factually based decision as to whether a law has been broken, you're going to cave in, aren't you? And perhaps make an incorrect decision in the eyes of the law because you've been influenced emotionally. I'm trying to put myself in the shoes of an assessor whose job it is to work out whether you, as a disabled person, are legally and factually eligible to receive taxpayers' money in the form of this benefit. So they have a job of work to do to make that assessment dispassionately as to whether you factually fit that criteria. And I'm trying to understand how important it is to include emotion in that decision and understand and empathize with your situation so that they can make a final holistic decision about your eligibility to receive the money. Do you see my dilemma?
I do see where you're coming from, and I do think a level of empathy is greatly important. However, if we just stick to the facts and the rules, it just is what it is, right? Certain disabled people qualify, under the current system, and Inclusion London greatly believe that the system needs reform. We do think that the system needs to change. However, that is because other systems are failing, right? So people are relying on PIP to help them access society, access the workplace, and this is the job of other things. Access to work as one of them. So you have disabled people that want to contribute, that want to give back to society and can't because other systems are failing.
What did you say? The purpose of life is a life with purpose. That's going to resonate. That's right. It's going to resonate with me. It absolutely is, because I really believe that myself. And actually, if you can facilitate that for somebody with state benefit to achieve that, then the benefit to the state is immeasurable, isn't it? Because what's the alternative? We take it away and brush that person under the carpet in the hope that they'll just live out their life in some other form. I mean, it doesn't add up, does it?
There are many disabled people that contribute to our city, our great city, and how it functions, how it works, but the language around disabled people needs to change. I'm a great believer that we're kind of being demonized for processes that are not working. And this is not the fault of genuine disabled people. This is the fault of systems. So we need to point the finger where the finger needs to be pointed. And I'd ask Tim's to co-produce it properly, write his review. He has been speaking to our manager for campaigns and justice, so he has been liaising with us. But I'd ask him to genuinely co-produce the outcome. Right, and it's possible. He just needs to lean into disabled people a bit more. And really listen to what he's being told.
Really, really good to hear from you. And just before you go, I mean, one thing that could change if disability is lifelong and there's no prognosis that would see any improvement to that individual situation, surely at that point you can be granted lifelong access to the benefit without having to go through the reassessment every few years. That would make sense, wouldn't it?
Mate, be careful with all that common sense, because the longer I live, the more I realise the common sense is not common. So
but it would save money as well, wouldn't it? I mean, it would save money because it would stop all that stress you have to go through.
Of course it would. This is very, very obvious stuff. And before I go, Jim, can I just say big up Eddie Nestor? Like he is my guy. Big up Eddie.
Yeah, and he would want to say the same to you because of all the work you're doing. But we are constantly thinking of Eddie and hoping for a full and speedy recovery. It's so good to hear from you, Adam. Thank you as always for coming onto the program. Adam Gabsi, their disability campaign, a friend of the show, with some really interesting insights into the current state of affairs with PIP. I mean, you understand my point, don't you? About the fact the law in this country is designed to be dispassionate. Judges, legal professionals will all adjudicate based on strict legal tests, evidence, and precedent, rather than any emotional or moral outrage, because ultimately that would only influence your decision, perhaps incorrectly. I suppose those assessing your eligibility to taxpayer-funded benefits must do the same thing, mustn't they? But surely there's room for some compassion when it comes to an outcome that is ultimately related to health. You've got to wonder, haven't you?